It's the right place. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Brad Morrison, and I'm the chair of the selection committee of the System Dynamics Applications Award. The award is presented by the Society as often as once a year for the best real-world application of system dynamics, based primarily on demonstrated measurable benefit through the use of system dynamics. Instructions for making nominations are on the Society website. I would like to thank the other members of the committee, Sharon Ells and Mark Heffernan. And before I present the award, I want to reiterate the call for nominations. Self-nominations are allowed and even encouraged. If you have done strong system dynamics work that has made an impact in the real world, please consider submitting a nomination. And a really big thank you to all of those of you who have made nominations. Please keep those nominations coming. And now for what we're here for. This usually starts with a sentence like, I'm delighted to present. And I have to say that this is actually one of the most enjoyable things that I do at the System Dynamics Society. So I am truly delighted to present the 2023 System Dynamics Application Award here in Chicago and virtually at the 41st International Conference of the System Dynamics Society to the Rethink Health Dynamics Model and Thriving Together Maps and Models team. The team we are recognizing for this work comprises Bobby Milstein, Jack Homer, Gary Hirsch, Elliot Fisher, Rebecca Niles, Chris Weil, Chris Soderquist, and John Sturman. And I would like to welcome those folks who are in the audience today to please come to the stage now. And we also have quite a number of them on the Zoom. Several of you have been through this process before, so you know that this is the time when I say all kinds of embarrassing things about you. I really hope that the folks online can hear me because I'm going to say some embarrassingly nice things about this fabulous work that you've all done. First, let me just tell you a little bit about it. The Rethink Health Dynamics model is a system dynamics model that simulates changes in population health and related metrics over 40 years. The model simulates changing health states as they are shaped by a variety of drivers and endogenously determines the demand for healthcare of various sorts. The model considers financial incentives from different payment schemes and contains more than 20 options for simulating the likely effects of efforts to improve. Results from Rethink Health suggest that there may be effective and affordable ways to unlock much greater health and economic potential through combined investments in clinical and population level initiatives coupled with financial arrangements. But the group did not stop there. They built on, expanded, and broadened the boundary of the Rethink Health work to develop the Thriving Together model, TTM, a model-based simulation to help change makers when trying to spring forward toward an equitable, thriving future. The TTM model looks not just at health, but well-being, described by the categories of struggling, thriving, struggling, and suffering, based on self-reported metrics tracked regularly by Gallup. And as one would expect from a great system dynamics model, it attends to the critical interactions among components such as vital conditions, equity, and belonging, and civic muscle. This work has had a truly powerful impact, and to call it a system dynamics project is far too narrow. From the beginning, this work aimed at making a difference in the real world. So I'm going to think of this work as a make the world a better place endeavor, literally, that is rooted in system dynamics. This work has been supported by funding from the Ripple Foundation, whose CEO shared with me some of the many accomplishments, and I just want to highlight them for you. 34 quarterly meetings have been convened by the Atlanta Collaborative for Health Improvement, and in 2020, they launched 18 new initiatives and involved over 2,500 individuals in efforts to enhance health and well-being across Atlanta. More than 20 universities are using the Rethink Health model in their curricula. More than 2,000 people have joined the Wellbeing in the Nation, so WIN network that they're sponsoring. People using the free online interface have generated over 265,000 simulation runs. The Ripple Foundation has devoted over, wait for it, $60 million of philanthropic investments over 15 years to enact strategies crafted through this SD modeling. And 52 federal agencies are collaborating together on long-term plans for equitable recovery and resilience based on the SD work. There have been at least 8 SD publications documenting these tools, supporting their uncompromising commitment to transparency. And 2 of those articles have been ranked in the 95th percentile in the research journals. The National Association of Schools of Public Affairs and Administration, also known as NASPA, launched its first ever national simulation competition in 2015 with the Rethink Health model. 181 master's students from 93 schools gathered in 5 sites across the country to use a version of Rethink Health that had been modified to include a version of the balanced scorecard, online feedback, and an interface from Forio that allowed it to run simultaneously, and I might add flawlessly, in the 5 sites. I'm going to read a few quotes from people who've actually experienced the value of working with Rethink Health. The Rethink Health model is helping the Atlanta Regional Collaborative for Health that I mentioned earlier lead the Atlanta region in dealing with the immediate closure of a large health system, and at the same time envision the desired future, one in which there is, in their words, more thriving and less struggling and suffering, a clear reference to the thriving together categories from before. Healthy Communities Delaware notes that the tools have had an incredible impact. The vital conditions framework, in their words, enabled us to set a table that felt more comprehensive and inclusive for cross-sector partners. It is an incredible tool for building an environment for equity and well-being in Delaware. Every sector can see that it plays an integral part in a collaborative effort. The Health Partners Institute, in their words, said it's generating new ideas and methods that find their way directly into health plan and care delivery work. Their roundtable on obesity solutions has experienced, as they said, a paradigm shift in addressing obesity and helped us move upstream to address underlying drivers of obesity instead of continuing to rely on energy balance equations at the individual level. The Be Well PBC in Palm Beach County, Florida, cites the growing network of more than 30 community and systems leaders. They say, we are armed with new language, elevating civic muscle and belonging and the vital conditions framework, laying the foundation for our collective health equity approach. They also said they're witnessing big systems internalizing the simple rules, shifting existing investments while staying mindful of cross-sector collaboration and alignment of resources, and breaking from business as usual to reimagine our health system where solutions are co-designed with the community we serve. Some other Florida experts reviewing the Palm Beach County work called out the vanguard of thinking of the model and pointed directly to the obvious benefits already improving population health countywide. To me, sort of, I'll use Bobby's words from yesterday, not as so much a super fan, but as probably a card-carrying system dynamicist, what truly stands out about this work is that it represents a persistent inquiry over more than a decade that has had a consistent devotion to the method of system dynamics with an unbridled focus on dynamics and the endogenous point of view. And they have discovered, created, and put into practice a powerful suite of ways to make the lessons available and meaningful to others. Interactive simulators, graphics to help with visualizations, facilitated workshops and other experiential methods, white papers, and even theater. They have done that with a team that assembles a group of passionate and dedicated individuals with a range of complementary expertise, and somehow magically found ways to integrate that expertise to make a difference. We are indeed all better off for the work that they have done. So I'll wrap up with just two suggestions for all of you, or I should say all of us. First, go read about or experience this work. It's absolutely fabulous. It is both impactful and hopeful about what we as a society can accomplish. And second, keep them in mind as a role model to do great work. Emulating this kind of collaborative work with a focus on goodness will serve us all quite well. So to the Rethink Health team, congratulations. Thank you for all you've done for the field of system dynamics. Actually, thank you for all you've done for the rest of the world. We care about them too, but yeah. And so thank you to all of you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the team and those on Zoom to tell us about their work. Congratulations, Bobby. There's a doc that goes with this if you want to be the one who takes it. And are we going to get a photograph now, or are we going to wait till later? We can do it later. Okay, let's do it later. Pass the hardware down. Right. Congratulations. And this is my virtual handshake, folks. Yeah, sit over here.
Terrific. Thank you so much. It is an incredible honor to join what has really been a long lineage of application winners. We've applauded many others in the past, and it's really an incredible privilege to be in their company. It's also really gratifying that this work is recognized because it is so much bigger than any one of us. We exist as an organization at Ripple and Rethink Health to do something that really none of us could ever do alone, which to realize a future with all people and places thriving together with no exceptions. I said a little bit yesterday about this organization's devotion to realizing that we can't do this with our ordinary habits of thought and practice, and that we need to be rethinking. What I didn't say is that the very genesis of Rethink Health as an organization was built with pioneers of system dynamics. John Sturman, Peter Senge, Jack Homer, Gary Hirsch, joined with Eleanor Ostrom in the years before she won a Nobel Prize, with Amory Lovins, who had been pioneers of environmental sort of consciousness, and a bunch of other change makers, Marshall Gans, we could go on, really built the DNA of an organization that was devoted not just to sort of thinking differently, but to build the tools and experiences that would allow people to be able to see the world differently, and most importantly, to see themselves as stewards of the systems that our lives depend on. This SD team is incredibly talented, each one a superstar in their own way, and it's remarkable the respect for each other's skill sets, not just building models, but creating experiences that are there for people to be able to feel these models as their own portal into looking at the world a little differently, and to not just build one project, but to pursue the questions that each model brings and the questions that come up over time as we recognize that our tools are not at all adequate yet to equip us with the dynamic understanding of we need to function as effective stewards. There are a lot of people who are not recognized here. The team at Thorio and IC Systems, for sure, are critical partners. Our team at Rethink Health over the years included 60 other collaborators, all of whom brought their questions to us and insights from these models to them. There was a lot of interaction back and forth, and actually a testament really to our dedication to working with collaborators is, oops, did it not animate? Oh dear. Oh, sorry. Well, we've got collaborators in places all across the country. We always look for those innovators who are willing to sort of get beyond their comfort zone and literally rethink what they're trying to do and with whom and how. And some of those collaborators are so close in some ways. Becky Payne being a longtime collaborator who worked across the US federal government, bringing some of these insights into what it would take to spring forward through the adversity that we're facing into a future that is much more promising, much more equitable. And Becky, after retiring from federal service, ends up becoming the CEO and president of the Ripple Foundation. So our collaborators are our team members are ambassadors for this work in really a spectacular way. We cultivate change makers at every level. And one of the things I'm most intrigued by and captivated by the work that we do is to be able to see that, there is really no single place from which the dynamic understanding and the stewardship that we can bring to this work. It can start anywhere and it can go everywhere, and to do this at multiple levels. Top of the list is our own organization. We build models and we use them with lots of people, but first and foremost, we use them for ourselves so that we're clear about what we're doing and to have deep conversations about how a small organization, really quite small relative to the scale of the problems, can find its niche in this ecosystem of change makers and bring more people to it. So we have been the principal users and beneficiaries in our own philanthropy. And that means not just like building models that other people use, but actually putting our then resources into the things that we've learned from these tools. And that is really what the big sort of commitment of our institution is, to playing a perpetual role as a place to advance the frontiers of dynamic understanding. I'm really proud to say that the quotes that you heard from Brad came from colleagues at many of these levels as well. And it's really their voices have been teaching us some of the things about what these models need to be built to do. As Brad said, we started with a model with a boundary that was pretty big. It included upstream and downstream dynamics, and it was, sort of covering a lot of metrics that people never really had in one place. And as big as that model was, the colleagues that we were working with around the middle part of the last decade had significantly outgrown the boundary of the biggest model that we knew how to build at the time. And that led to the second generation of tools that was not so much about what are we trying to prevent and how can we save money, but what are we trying to create? What is the well-being that we can unlock in a more equitable and thriving future? And that led to a whole new generation of collaborators, a whole new generation of tools, many of which are not strictly only system dynamics, but ways of getting the ideas across to people in ways that would be memorable and meaningful to them. So I'll just end by saying that, yeah, a lot of our work is concentrated on investment priorities, helping people see that, the next new investment of resources really needs to go to the place that can unlock the most potential. Where can we invest among those that have the most to gain in this work? And how do we do that even through the adversity that we face? And how do we help people recognize that of all the thousands of conditions that we can set in the world, there are some vital conditions that we need to invest in, beginning with our collective sense of belonging and civic muscle. And that can unlock a rising generation of stewards. These ideas have been important. We've also been paying attention to model use, and our colleagues at the Georgia Health Policy Center and Karen Minyard have been close evaluators of our work to see what are we learning about the conditions for even effective model use. And all of this is really in a kind of an interactive relationship with the users. It's really the dynamic understanding that creates and also reflects the value that we've been trying to develop for users. And people don't use these tools for any one thing. They use it for multi-sector strategy and movement building. They use it for organizational growth and development of their own institutions. They use it increasingly for strategic case making. How do we pull the next new collaborator into this work in ways that excite them for their own reasons? And how do we end up sort of establishing the momentum around leverage that would matter and doing the research and measurement that's needed to equip ourselves in the real world with the measures that we can actually build in these simulated environments. So I'm going to let Jack explain some of the highlights of the structural understanding, right? Structure not only creates behavior, but it explains it. And we wanted to lift up a few of the insights about what's come from the representation of these dynamics as structure.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks very much. Yeah, so we thought it might be interesting, fun for you to hear about what we've learned from this experience, not only what our audiences have learned, and also some of the nitty gritty of the models and lessons for other areas of modeling, perhaps. So the themes of learning sort of fall into two areas, one being engaging with others. These are our constituencies, and the other being policy findings, what we've seen coming out of the models, both of the models, the Rethink Health model and the Thriving Together model. So first, in terms of engaging with others, we've just found it critical to build on previous work. We are talking here about community health, which is kind of a cross of public health and urban dynamics, and areas which are with a lot of cross currents. And we found that we needed anchors to survive those currents. And those include things that you've heard about, the capability trap model of John and Nelson, the work of Eleanor Ostrom, which won the Nobel Prize in 2009 on the theme of stewardship and institutional economics. Especially when it came to the Thriving Together model, we were no longer talking about health economics and hardcore operational stuff, but much more sociological. And so we needed those anchors. Secondly, we have found that it's important to apply and customize our models to multiple cases. The best example of this is the Rethink Health model, which has been applied to more than 10 cases around the country. Every time we applied it to another case and found a good response from that, we were building support for and momentum for this model. So that's been important. And third, creating related tools and learning experiences has been important for our users. So not just graphical outputs from simulation models, but experiences. And the prototype for this is our Thriving Together Theater, this immersive experience, which I did not develop, and I think it's an amazing thing that they've done. So policy findings, both models, we find that it's important to find a powerful virtuous loop, which you can call an engine of progress. And I'll be showing you the examples. Secondly, it's important to move upstream because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But you have to do that carefully. Where do you find the resources to do it? When do you do it exactly? How can you avoid a big worse before better? And so that's an important theme for us. Third, find a way to mitigate the risks and resistance that might come from some of your interventions. If you can find a way to offset their side effects, then you're better off. That's avoiding pitfalls. And fourth, find a way to improve multiple outcomes. Very often in our models, we're concerned about morbidity, mortality, quality of life, cost, and is there a way to address all of those concerns simultaneously with what you might call a best portfolio? So let me jump right into the Rethink Health Dynamics model, which is a big model and more than 2,000 equations. It replicates the US from 2000 to 2021. It projects to 2040 or 2050. And what you see here is sort of a high-level sector diagram. The basic idea is that you're going from upstream risks. These include low income, underinsurance, unhealthy behaviors like poor nutrition, lack of exercise, smoking, and environmental risks. Those are all worked into the model, and they lead to changes in status of the population, the health status, which is embodied in chronic illness and disease, both physical and mental. And so the changing status of the population health will lead to changes in their utilization of healthcare, doctors' office visits, hospitalizations, rehab, long-term care. These are all represented in the model, and so no wonder it's 2,000 equations. This turns into our tracking of healthcare costs along all of the dimensions that are tracked by the National Healthcare Expenditures Database, and that help us have confidence in the model. And then we have some vicious cycles that go back to the upstream risks and make things even harder. So when healthcare costs are high or when people are disabled, they're more likely to lose insurance or to lose employment, which makes things even harder for them and can lead to they or their families facing further chronic illness. How can we deal with such a complicated mess? Well, the green sector on the bottom is called investments in financial mechanisms. We can try to do things downstream in the healthcare system. We can try to do things upstream to these risks. But where do you find the resources to do that? Traditionally, those come from one-time or temporary grants and loans, and they can do some good for a short time, and then they tend to run out. But there is a relatively recent new opportunity called shared savings. And that's the link that you see in the lower right-hand corner there from healthcare costs. And the idea is that if you can make an arrangement with insurers, with this would be Medicare or with private insurance companies, to share some of the savings that you might achieve from investing, especially to save on healthcare costs, then you might generate some money, a nest egg to do even more. And so what we found is that this is an engine of progress that can really work, and it can work faster and faster if you start downstream and then go upstream with it. And I think I'll just very quickly say here that if you combine interventions that do different kinds of things, that can reduce chronic disease, like by working on upstream risks, that can reduce health inequity by focusing on the disadvantaged portion of the population and their primary care, and can do things about healthcare costs directly, like a thing called coordinated care, and offset their pitfalls, then you can really make some significant improvements. And this is the black line here is what is our combined portfolio that makes some significant inroads, hypothetically, in what we could achieve with our healthcare system. So let me turn to the Thriving Together model. And this is just to say that there is a way to measure these concepts that you've heard about, the thriving, struggling, suffering concepts. And it's been, it's called the Cantrell ladder. You ask people, how are you feeling now, basically? What's your level of life satisfaction now? And how do you think it's going to be in 5 years? So it's a sense of how are you now and what's your hope for the future? This is brought together to put people into these categories of thriving, struggling, and suffering. It's measured by the Gallup organization all over the world, and they've done so every month, sometimes since 2008. And this is what it looks like when it's broken out by race and ethnicity. There are some important disparities and changes that have occurred over time. And let me just say that these measures are nicely correlated with some things that you might expect and some things you might not expect. So in recent years, or at least pre-pandemic time, thriving is well correlated with socioeconomic measures like poverty and education. And so that the Black population has been, of the races and ethnicities, the worst off on thriving. But suffering has actually, in recent years, been worse for the white population, which goes along with their higher suicide rate and their higher alcoholism rate. Life expectancy is highest for these three groups. This doesn't include other groups that we could show, for the Hispanic population, sometimes known as the Hispanic paradox. And they have a life expectancy that's 3 years greater than the white population and 6 years greater than the Black population. So there's some real disparities here we're trying to deal with. And this is what the model looks like using these metrics at the individual level and also metrics at the community level, dealing with things called vital conditions, belonging and civic muscle, fairness, which is very important for thriving and for equity, and urgent services capacity, which is sort of the downstream piece of this. So how does this model work? This is another sector diagram where we have investments, decisions, and understanding that we only have so many resources at the community level to invest in these various things, and we have to decide about how to allocate those investments. So historically, a lot of these resources go into urgent services, the downstream piece, the safety net at a community level. We feel that we need to supply a safety net, and so something like half of our resources go in that direction. But we have found that if it's possible, and this is where the capability trap comes in, that you could move some of your resources upstream, and especially in the direction of belonging and civic muscle, which is civic participation and the resources and volunteerism that would come with that. You have the potential for an engine of growth here. The thing that you have to be careful about, though, is not doing that too quickly. So it is possible to sort of do that gradually, especially if you give yourself enough of a time horizon so that there's not too much of worse before better, not too much of worse before better. And this is a very hopeful kind of a scenario that corresponds to the Federal Interagency Plan for Equitable Long-Term Recovery and Resilience, a big mouthful, the ELTRR. But if we make certain assumptions about this, and we've looked very carefully at the 68 different interventions that they propose, and also carefully phase in that direction and out of urgent services, we can get this nice result where thriving goes up. This is over a 25-year period, mind you, but thriving goes up to unprecedented heights, suffering goes down and eliminates the disparities that we saw, and everybody's life expectancy increases. So let me just turn now to conclude with a quote from our founder, Jay Forrester, who spoke to this conference 16 years ago and said, "I leave you with the challenge to plan for marching upward from the present aimless plateau and start climbing the mountains ahead." This is the part that you may not be familiar with. "It is not necessary to reach or convert a large fraction of the public, but only a subset of thoughtful opinion leaders." So that's kind of what we have been doing here at Rethink Health. And you see the logos of many of our partners and constituencies across the country. Thank goodness for them, because they help us refine the ideas and they have taught us a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and congratulations again. Thank you, Bobby and Jack, for giving us a little more insight into that work. And thank you again to the entire team for everything you've done. Congratulations. I'm going to ask you folks to stick around for a photograph, and I'm going to ask the folks on Zoom if they can stick around, and we'll try to figure out how we can get them in the photograph. I'm not sure. Somebody will be smart enough to do that, not me. Everybody else, thank you for coming. And now it is my duty to tell you that we need you to get out of this room, because this is the room where the banquet is going to be held, and they have to reset it for that. So the next thing on our program is at 5:15, we have table talks. Remember, that's that exciting new idea. And we encourage all of you to please try to find a table talk that you might be interested in. Go there. And then we'll see, I hope, all of you back here at 6:45 for the banquet. See you this evening. Thanks for coming.